And for the last time, at least until free agency time or so, we got to get Jeff on for free agency. But the football season has ended, folks. And so for the last time, for now, we are joined by our friend at The Athletic, Jeff Howe. He's on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Jeff, as always, we appreciate you. Let's start with Indianapolis. They hired Sacramento's own Shane Steichen as their new head coach today. How did the process play out, and what are your thoughts on that choice?
Well, they interviewed literally every human being on the planet over the course of multiple weeks and narrowed it down to Steichen. So it was a thorough process. It was certainly an interesting process. I think all signs, just from reading from the outside, all signs pointed toward Irsay really wanting to stick with Saturday. So the fact that they went with Steichen, who was one of the most qualified candidates going, or one of the more qualified candidates going into this hiring cycle, I think it's a solid hire, and we'll see how Steichen's able to build out his staff, what this delay might have cost in terms of like available assistance, but a really good offensive mind, a team that appears poised to draft and develop a quarterback after going the veteran route for so long. And what Steichen has done, or had just done, to help develop Jalen Hurts, that was a huge resume booster.
Was this them waiting for Steichen and the Eagles to be done with their playoff run, or was this Jim Irsay's interference with the whole process?
Yes. I think you can look at both. Irsay wanted to interview, again, every candidate under the sun, which is his right to do. But there are downfalls to taking or to being so deliberate with the process. Again, look at the amount of qualified assistants who have been hired. Sure. And I'm not saying that's what's happening with Indianapolis right now, but, I've talked to coaches or executives in the past, and they've said, they'll go through this interview process and we'll narrow it down to 3 guys. And this candidate will say, I've got X, Y, and Z lined up for offensive, defensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, whatever. And then the process takes a couple weeks, and all of a sudden those guys are off the board because they took another job. So that is a real factor, but if Steichen is their guy, if he was the one that they targeted all along, or at least was on their short list, good for them. They got their guy.
Jeff Howe is with us here, Cattles Ramie, Sactown Sports. Another hire in the NFL, Jeff, Jonathan Gannon, another guy from Philly, hired by the Cardinals. How much sense does that hire make to you?
Well, going into the start of this season, I started asking around front office types mostly about who is going to be on the short list of candidates going into this cycle. And before anybody had even played a snap, Jonathan Gannon's name came up quite a bit. So somebody who started to impress a year ago, and you look at what their defense did, the way that they were adaptable, their pass rush was historic. And granted, there was a lot of talent on that team, but Gannon's role in that was significant enough that he was on everybody's radar going into the season. The Eagles had a massive turnaround. Increased their sack total by somewhere around 40. I can't remember if it was 39 or 41. And Gannon's done a phenomenal job. So the fact that the Cardinals also were able to wait this long and wait out Gannon, if he's their guy, then good for them.
Jeff, the controversial call at the end of the Super Bowl on Sunday, I have a hard time. My co-host, my cohort here called it a trash call. I have a hard time coming down hard on a referee when the guy himself admits, I held. I was hoping to get away with something. What was your take on that?
I hated the fact that such a great game came down to that call. Because the writing was on the wall. As soon as that happened, the Chiefs are going to run out the clock or a significant portion of it, kick the winning field goal, and the Eagles weren't really going to have a chance to answer. The thing that you want to go letter of the law, those are the tough ones, because then you say, well, okay, why didn't you call offensive holding on like 90% of the rest of the plays?
Right.
This wasn't just the first defensive holding call of that Super Bowl. I just looked it up, so I'm glad you guys brought it up, because this research would have gone out the window. I just looked this up like 10 minutes ago. Schefter's crew had not called defensive holding. Now, I know the crews get a little mixed during the playoffs, but a Schefter's crew had not called defensive holding since Christmas Eve. They went 3 full games without a defensive holding call. It would have been 4 full games if that call was let go at the end of the Super Bowl. So, yeah, was it defensive holding? Sure, it was, by the letter of the law. But when you're a defensive back and you are preparing for a crew to call a game a certain way, and it gets called that certain way for 59 minutes, 58 minutes, and then a call goes against you that's a borderline call, I mean, that's got to sting. And again, I thought it took away from what could have been a fantastic all-time caliber ending.
Jeff Howe from The Athletic on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline, Folsom Lake Honda one-stop Honda shop. Jeff, we look at the Niners coaching staff. Slovic's gone. Undland's now gone, both going to Houston. Should the Niners be concerned with too much brain drain at some point here?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a concern when you have this much success. I mean, I've seen it. We've compared a lot of things over the course of this season to the Patriots and past examples there. I mean, you look at what the Eagles are going through now. It was similar to the Patriots losing Charlie Weiss and Romeo Crennel after the 2004 Super Bowl. You look at the Niners and losing. It's not just the coordinators. When you lose the coordinators, you got guys that can develop. But when you start to lose a number of assistants, the coaching as a whole is going to suffer. So Shanahan, in my opinion, was the best coach in the league this season. And his staff is incredible. It has been incredible. He deserves the benefit of the doubt that he's going to be able to replenish a lot of that brain, the talent, the brains that have left that building. But it's tough. I mean, because the coaches who have left and brought guys with them, that's reinstalling a lot of this stuff. We talked about a lot about young quarterbacks having to learn Shanahan's system. Depending on who he's able to bring in, if these aren't guys that he's worked with in the past or maybe doesn't have an extensive history with, now all of a sudden you've got a coaching staff who has to learn his system. And you've got to get the quarterbacks and the rest of the offense to buy into what these other assistants, I know it's going to be Shanahan's offense, but like what these other assistants are trying to teach. And if there's ever any miscommunication, you got some heads turning. So, yeah, there are problems that can arise. But right now, I mean, this is the first time Shanahan's really going through this as deep as it has been. And I'm interested to see how he's able to counter it.
We, Nick and myself, we were talking about a report earlier in the show that before Derek Carr was officially released today, the Raiders had kind of wanted to control and limit who he was able to go out and talk to about a potential trade and renegotiation of his contract. And Nick and I both found that counterproductive and felt like they shot themselves in the foot or cut their nose off despite their face. How normal is that? Is that kind of par for the course when you have a situation like you have with the Raiders and Carr?
Well, I'm not saying that the report's not true because I don't know, but I had not heard that detail.
Okay.
This is actually the first I'm hearing of it. So what I know, all I can go off of is what I know. And that's the Saints were the only team that showed interest in acquiring Carr because of the contract. The Saints wanted Carr to take a pay cut. Carr wasn't willing to do that, so that's why he informed them that he was not going to accept a trade to the Saints. It just was a non-starter with other teams. And going back a couple weeks, going back to around like Senior Bowl time, teams were willing to wait it out because they didn't want to trade for that contract. And that's how it played out over the ensuing couple weeks. It came to a head really on Super Bowl Sunday, and we saw the outcome that, at first blush, when they benched Carr, I was guilty of it as anybody. Like, I was speculating that, hey, you know what? This guy should be worth a first-round pick. Maybe at worst case, a second-rounder. I don't think I thought it all through. That was my speculation. It was wrong. But as you watch the process play out, nobody was willing to touch that contract when everybody kind of predicted this was going to be the outcome.
Jeff, you've been fantastic all football season, man. Let's circle back around free agency time. Until then, be well, you and your family.
I'd love to. Thanks a lot for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun this season, so I appreciate y'all.
All right, Jeff. Thank you, buddy. There goes Jeff Howe from The Athletic on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop.